Did the Prophet ﷺ actually give an equation for how much Quran you should read on a regular basis, or some advice to the companions outside of the month of Ramadan? Is there a number that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned of how many times the Sahaba could do a khatam, they could finish the Quran cover to cover in a month? Does anybody know? No? You got the hadith right, but the number is off. So you have the right sigha, but yeah. All right, so there's one narration where the Prophet ﷺ prohibits, or seemingly prohibits, finishing the Quran more than once within 3 days. So that's one narration where the Prophet ﷺ seemingly prohibits finishing the entire Quran more than once in 3 days. Okay? There's another narration though. Abu Amir, you're there. What did you have for iftar? You're close. But there's actually a narration where there's something that's prescriptive. So this is prohibitive, this is prescriptive. It's a narration where the Prophet ﷺ mentions اقرأ القرآن في سبع, to finish the Quran every 7 days if you would like to, and to not go beyond that. And this is actually, so a weekly khatam of the Quran. And so this is actually, when you read in the books of ulum al-Quran, this is what's referred to as a tasbir. A tasbir. Reading the Quran once a week. And subhanAllah, it's a beautiful narration because there is a mechanism to this. One of the tabi'een authentically said, I asked the Prophet ﷺ, said, I asked the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, how did you used to finish the Quran? What was your methodology? So they said that we would read 3, and then 5, and then 7, and then 9, and then 11, and then 13, and then we would finish off with Al-Mufassal, which are the Surah Qaf onwards. What does that mean? 3, one day, day number 1, we'd read Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran, and Nisa. Then we'd read 5 the next day. So you take, after that, Al-Ma'idah to Surah At-Tawbah. Then we would read 7, starting from Surah Yunus onwards. Then we would read 9, 11, 13 by surahs. And then the last day we would take Al-Mufassal, which are Surah Qaf onwards. Surah Qaf until the end of the Mus'haf. So this is an authentic narration that gives you some insight into the ways, a methodical way that many of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ used to approach the Quran, reading it on a weekly basis. So that would give them 4 khatams a month. And this is something that's narrated from many of the Salaf. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, his son, narrates that he used to do his tasbih from Jum'ah to Jum'ah. So he would always finish his khatam right before Jum'ah. This is narrated from Qatada rahimahullah, it's narrated from Al-Awza'i. Many of the Salaf, many of the companions had this habit of finishing the Quran once a week. So now you guys are like, okay, well, what happens in Ramadan? So the answer is once a week. We have to do it once a week now. So I can end the khatira now and send you all home depressed. All right? No, this is to just show you there was a methodology here. There was a method that they were taking into consideration. They were weighing the times that they would start to the time that it would end. Some of them even had a particular day that they would start, a day that they would end. And that's important because it shows you the importance of getting as structured as possible with it. That's the lesson I want you to take from this, is to be structured throughout the year. Think about it. So they're waking up and they know exactly how many surahs they're going to read that day. That's beautiful. And many of them were not hufaz, by the way. Many of the companions, the majority of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ were not hufaz. But they were thinking about how many surahs they were going to read every day. And they had a day in mind that they would start, a day in mind that they would finish. That keeps you accountable to something. And that's something that we should do throughout the year. The quantity aside. Okay, building on that. When Ramadan would come, it is obvious that the Sahaba did not see, and the pious predecessors did not see, that there was anything of dislike to increasing the reading of the Quran way beyond once every 3 days. And so you start to see the narrations, Sahaba, Salaf that would finish the Quran once a day in Ramadan. Some of them twice a day, narrated from Uthman radiallahu anhu or Shafi'i rahimahullah, even from a later generation, twice a day. And you're thinking, how is that possible? Just put that to the side for a moment and just establish the principle that they understood that when Ramadan came along, it was go time. They busied themselves with the Quran the entire day and entire night. Granted, the entire society revolves around reading the Quran in Ramadan. So subhanAllah, if you live in those societies at the time and you're walking around, there is a culture of the Quran here. Everyone's trying to recite as much of it as they possibly can. And they are exerting themselves in worship. And of course, some of this is included in their qiyam. They would recite in their qiyam, outside of their qiyam. The point is that there's another level of exertion within the month of Ramadan. So Qatada rahimahullah, for example, used to recite the Quran once a week. And then when Ramadan came around, so I want you to take another methodical point here. The first 20 days of Ramadan, he would finish the Quran once every 3 days. And then the last 10 nights of Ramadan, he'd finish it once a night. So he did once every 3 days within the first 20. And then he did once every one of the last 10 nights. That's what we're all going to be doing, right? Inshallah, one day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us barakah in our time and give us that connection to the Quran.